Welcome everyone to the BCA Tech Talk. I'm Liz Fisher and I'm going to moderate for today. I'd like to welcome you all and welcome Jim Feeney, who is our guest speaker for today. A couple of items. I'm assuming most of you know GoToWebinar, but just in case, you got a control panel when you signed in. At the top left-hand corner, you'll see a little arrow in an orange box that opens and shuts that panel so you can see the full screen. You should also see a little box in there for questions. As we go through today, please add your questions into that box, and at the end of the presentation today, we will take questions for Jim. A couple of upcoming events. I want to make sure you all know we have our webinar coming up on October 4th, which is the next in the series for the fall. And also NCBC, starting on October 16th. It is our 25th year celebrating this premier conference, the original commissioning conference. I hope all of you can come and be a part of that event. We have some amazing stuff happening this year, so I really hope you all can make it out to that, including our annual dinner for the BCA, our annual meeting. We'll be holding it up at the Olympic venue in Park City. We have buses taking everyone up there, so please plan to attend that. So for now, though, I want to get started on our Tech Talk for today. Jim Feeney is with Canon Design. He is also with our Central Chapter Board. He has offered to present today on TAB and commissioning coordination. I want to thank the Central Chapter for helping us get these Tech Talks kicked off this year. This is the second one. They are being recorded. We will not have one in October because of NCBC, but we'll resume again in November and have one in December also. During our leadership conference next month, we will work with the chapters to get them all scheduled for next year. So we'll have a calendar of them for you next year, and you'll be able to see them. Next week, you will all receive an email about how to log in the members only section of the BCA website under resources, where you can view all of the Tech Talks. We have been recording them, and you will get an email with directions on how to log in and how to view them once we get that finalized. We have a consultant helping us build that page out on our website right now. So look for that next week. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim and let him get started with his presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Jim. Glad to be here. I've designed my talk so it's about 30 minutes, and I want to leave time for Q&A, and I'll stay on till at least 1 o'clock if we have questions. So, brief introduction to myself. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I had my own engineering firm for about 10 years, and when I did, we also offered test and balance and commissioning. My firm was a member of NEB at the time. So a little summary, what we're going to talk about today is that coordination with TAB will make your job easier. I'm going to cover about taking the lead on organizing a pre-TAB conference. We'll look for these TAB items during your commissioning design review. I'll point out a few things to look for in a TAB report, and then we'll briefly discuss the commissioning back check of TAB work. So there are 3 major TAB agencies that offer certification. The specs often reference these organizations and their procedures. So you see it's NEB, National Environmental Balancing Bureau, AABC, Associated Air Balance Council, and TAB, Testing, Adjusting, and Balancing Bureau. So I also want to point out that NEB and AABC also certified commissioning. TAB does not, and that many TAB firms also sell commissioning as well. Let's see, so a question, how well do you know these guys? Most of our commissioning plans say something like, functional performance testing does not begin until pre-functional startup and TAB is completed for a given system. So you just set yourself up that you are waiting for TAB so you could finish. So it's in your best interest to help him complete his work as fast as he can. And I encourage you to get to know them well. We have a lot in common. Many of the same people can work in commissioning, can work in service, or they can work for contractors, they can work for TAB. So it really is a small group. And unfortunately, on some jobs, they start much later than commissioning because they're like tied in with a mechanical sub, and they don't get picked until they bid, and then they might be bidding it. So often the role that the test and balance has is much different than yours. Of course, the best way is for both TAB and for commissioning firms to be hired by the owner up front, same time they hired AE firms. But the lucky few can get those kind of jobs. So I'm going to talk about the TAB conference. And where this comes from is the master spec version. And master spec is basically a cover edit name for a product that you can buy and subscribe to, and it writes architectural engineering specifications. So what you see here is a clip from an unedited master spec. So there's a TAB conference, and this is meet with owners and architects representatives on approval of TAB. So I, basically substitute meet with commissioning providers on approval of TAB. So you are an owner's representative, or maybe you're an architect's rep. Depends on how you're hired on the project. But either way, you've got a role. You've got you already mentioned in a standard spec. So if you look down to description, you'll see a few items, what's on the agenda, and we'll cover that a little bit, but basically submittal requirements, examination report, TAB plan, the work schedule, and coordination, things like that. Those are all, I'll cover more in detail. So if you're lucky and you're hired in the design phase, you can help write it. I know most engineers would actually welcome help in writing the specification for TAB because it's like 34 pages long, and a lot of them don't really know what's in there, and they're kind of afraid of it because it's not familiar. So if you have a federal government job, everybody's different. They have a different type of spec, and for example, they'll have a design review report, and there's a description there on the slide. They also have a system inspection report and a systems readiness report. What I encourage you to do is, when you get on a job, read the specs for TAB. You will find something that will give you leverage to call one or to join. Basically, often, like in the government job, they may already have one, but you can jump in and say, I want to be part of it. I want to bring BIS. You can get your agenda taken care of as part of this. So, okay. So here's a typical agenda that I would encourage you to do, and it follows the spec. But ask for a TAB design review. That's where the test and balance guide goes through and looks for balancing devices, looks for things that might be missing, looks for errors and maybe addition, looks for missing VAV boxes or things like that. And I'll go into a little more detail on that too. Second is TAB plan that includes their scope. You want to, at this time, compare the TAB scope to the commissioning and the BIS scope as well. You should discuss what software is used for BIS, TAB, and commissioning, and what are the restrictions for access or use. And then you should discuss the schedule for TAB, BIS, and commissioning. So that's a summary of what we'll cover. Excuse me, I get a drink of water there. So the TAB conference. Often the TAB design review is spelled out in quite detail in the specs. Again, this is kind of it wasn't from the unedited version of master spec, but it's pretty close when I look at that. So I won't go through all this. You guys can read that. Basically, just read the specs that are on your job and see what's there. And this is very commonly in specs, but my experience is that unless someone presses for this, you won't get it. If the engineer presses it, you might. If the owner, you might. If you as commissioning, you can get it. But if you don't have a tab conference, you definitely should get this to tab review. So as a side note, I highlighted under F, you'll see that word commissioning. And it's kind of an old reference to commissioning and should be removed. So it says examine system and equipment installations to verify that they are complete and that testing, cleaning, adjusting, and commissioning specified in individual sections have been performed. So basically it's saying that you guys should have commissioned it before they do the test and balance, which is the exact opposite of what's normal and what's said elsewhere. So what I believe is it's kind of a holdover when like the contractor said he commissioned it, or and really who just did startup, or controls guys say they commissioned it. But it really doesn't fit anymore. It should be removed. By the way, in the word, if you do a search of commissioning under most tab specifications, you're only going to see it once or twice. A lot of them are very dated. They're old. They were written long ago, and they haven't really been written to integrate with commissioning. So that's kind of unfortunate if they follow that spec. So that's different for, say, if you are doing a project for a big hospital or for a university or some government job. A lot of times they will have people on staff that are updating the specs, and they're not relying on master spec or some firms, architectural engineering firms, specs that have been around forever. So just to be careful when you read their specs that they could be pretty old. Okay. The tab plan includes your scope, and that's where you should really talk about what that is, because you cannot rely on the specs for definition of tab scope of work. Many engineers don't understand tab, especially the younger ones, and they're afraid to edit out something that might be needed. So they'd much rather throw in the kitchen sink than to be caught on leaving out something that's important. So you'll often see all these things in there, and they are kind of depending on the contractor to say what they're really going to do. So if you can, try to see their contract or see their bid or something. You don't even know their number, but see what's in their scope. In my experience, is that most tab companies will define their scope in detail in their bid, and it's because the drawings and the specs don't do a good job of that. And I remember when I was bidding jobs, I was always like, shaking my head every time I looked at the drawings of another engineer, or look at the specs and go, I don't want to be on the hook for all these things. You'll never make any money. So next, another point I just want to go on about this is kind of, if you noticed before, I had highlighted the verifying that automatic control devices are functioning properly. So if you go in and go further, this is what it says. And it's hard to believe that this is still in master specs. So verify that controllers are calibrated and commissioned. Really? Okay. And then read further. Note air pressures and device positions correlate with airflow and water flow measurements. The next one, it really gives it away. Check name, control, supply air pressure, and observe compressor and dry operations. Obviously this is decades old and rarely used or ever needed. So it just kind of reflects you can't depend on it. And if you guys think that this could edit out, I still see it. And I hate to say that, I see it here at Canon Design, and when I review other people's work and work to pull it out. And they do, if you notice, the editors note up there in the blue text, they do say normally delete paragraph below. So, oh well, they try to keep up with things. One of the things you could do is that when you when you write your commissioning plan, that's the time to check to be sure it aligns with the tab and BAS. Often you will be writing your commission plan, before the tab conference. But if you can, go in there and help edit the tab and the BIS specs and make sure that that lines up with what you're doing. It would be difficult to commission some things that aren't balanced, and or if they don't have automatic controls, it'd be really difficult. So again, that's another topic, but I want to relate. Don't trust with the specs. Don't go with just what the specs are. Often they're just a suggestion, in that they don't really hold weight during the project. Now, of course, everything I say today, there's always a counter to it. So I've been around long enough to know that there's no positives, there's no absolutes, there's no nevers, there's no always. So when I say things, keep that in mind. It's just you have to apply it to your project. So a very important thing now is what software is used for BAS, tab, and commissioning. The specs normally say that the BAS contractor must allow access and all tools needed for their system. So I clipped out a little paragraph from the BIS spec. Not the tab spec, this is the BIS spec, and it's saying that they should provide the tools, provide training, you can also add commissioning to the spec too if you have difficulty. Just get yourself in there too as well. Okay, let's see. So the tab conference. Again, what software is used for BAS, tab, and commissioning? So just like a lot of commissioning firms, tab contractors are automating too. So for instance, Building Start, they offer a commissioning software called Building Test, and I've used that. But they also have a software called AirNab, and that's for test and balance. Facility Build is a tab, CXL is commissioning, and then BIM 360 has some others. So it's important to find out what's being used on the project, because if you can get access, and just to look at it, you can often find out what's happening quicker. You don't have to use emails to exchange information. You can just get in. So I encourage everybody, if there's no cost, it's just basically another login to see what's happening. Try to get everybody using whatever software is available. Next item is schedule for the tab, BIS, and commissioning. So all three of us are planned too often as just another task at the end of the project. The mechanical contractor is just going to be throwing his stuff in, and then he calls in the controls guy, and when that's done, he wants the tab guy done in BS, and they're basically going to give you 2 weeks for each. And oftentimes, this was a real schedule. I did not make this up. I was actually on that project, and we had test and balance, and we had commissioning for 2 weeks all at the same time. And obviously, it did not work that well. So you have to fight for a schedule that's more integrated. And I would say look out for your brethren, look out for commissioning, look out for tab, look out for BIS, because we are all together. We're all often like mules in a ride going down the Grand Canyon. You can't jump ahead. You can't be skipping. You've got to follow, and you've got to wait for the guys ahead of you before you can get to where you want to go. Okay. So what I want to encourage you is that you take the lead to get this going. And I'm going to say, how do you get this how do you participate? So if you can help at the engineer at the beginning, get the engineer to edit the tab specs and include it. While you're at it, edit the BIS specs too, just so that nobody has to argue about, hey, it's not in my bid. But also I want to point out, if it's not in the specs, then look to the tab agencies and the procedures. I list here all of the procedures, and they're all quite similar, as you can imagine. I can talk about NEB because I was a member of NEB, and they have a section like this, and it says the CF, which is certified firm, it says they follow the current procedural standards. They communicate through proper channels on a regular basis. I mean, right there, you read through that, you'll see to be certified and maintain your certification, you're expected to act at a high level of responsibility. And the whole professionalism, that's partly how they sell their firm to their agencies, their certifications to the buyers. So basically, so if you need to, you've got that to fall back on. Okay. All right, that's the TAB conference. It's pretty much what I have for that. Now I'm going to flip the next topic, which is commission design reviews, and what can you do to help make the test and balance go better. So first is this is the time to add your items. And again, I understand sometimes commissioning doesn't have a design review phase, but if you do, this is what you should look for. Instrumentation calibration. Often you'll see, 12 months or 1 year, and that's considered excessive. Most manufacturers recommend 2 years. So if you can add it, there's really no benefit. When I sent my instruments, they were always calibrated when I sent them, and they didn't find it. Most of the people I've talked to about this subject, they go, we know if it's out of calibration, and we'll send it in. I mean, these are tools they use every day. So I just want you to say, if you can help, if you do that, it makes little things easier. Certainly you don't want to get to the end of the job and time's running out and to discover he's got 13 months on his last time he had it calibrated. And that's just not worth it. So balancing valves handles extended past insulation. That's in case the specs or someone wants to mark the settings. Yeah, let's see. Individual tag for all fire damper, smell detector. Look for things that have to be touched by multiple trades. So, for instance, a VAV has to be, it's mechanical, but it's also controls. It's also commissioning. Fan coils need power. Heat pumps need power. Smoke dampers need, BIS. They need fire alarms. So, if you have a project where they just have 6 sizes of fan coils and they call it FC1 through FC6, it's really hard. So look for that. Try to get that. So everything's got a tag. Anymore if the job is done in Revit, they easily make schedules. It's very good at tagging things. So tolerances. That's a pretty big topic for tab guys. Here's a typical thing where they'll say +5 to -10%, and air outlets plus or minus 10%, heating plus or minus 10%, chill water 5%. This is reasonable in my opinion, but NEB will recommend plus or minus 10% for everything. So +10, -10, and the client pays more for closer tolerances. That's something though. They should know that. And often the limitation of instruments will make it harder to get any tighter than 10% on some devices. So last Tech Talk was airflow monitoring stations, but I'm going to mention another thing that I see a lot is that often the control schematic by the engineer will show airflow measuring station on the outside air. And on the right, you see a big hospital air handler, and that's no problem there. On the left is a rooftop unit, and there's no way to put an airflow measuring station outside air. Are you there? Okay, I'll keep on going. So the other thing, just look for that airflow measuring station. Sometimes on rooftop units, if you want it on a supply and or the return, you can use a piezometer airflow measuring ring, and you get the optional, get something in there. So things to look for on that. So now, I won't read this whole thing, but here's a unedited tab spec, and you see where it says owner architect. Well, that you could also put in commissioning right there if you wanted to do the inspections. But here's a bone of contention for a lot of tab guys, and that's the rechecking of 10%. It's really considered excessive. Even rechecking a whole day, somebody's going to pay for that. The owner's paying for it for certain. And often it won't be done unless someone really pushes it. So rather than that, I suggest that you treat the tab readings like other activities and witness a portion of the water and air balancing. So maybe you spend half a day on water, half a day on air. And, don't make them double, but just go and you will learn and you will watch and I tell you, you'll be able to spot if someone is not doing it right or not. So next one is additional test. Some specs will say perform additional testing. They don't say how much, but additional testing 90 days later. Or they'll say seasonal periods. With BAS, really, you can get what you want from this with put in BAS trends. Now, this adds scope to the controls guys, but most of them now, it's not a big deal. So I'll suggest that if you do this, it's a whole lot less for you on the back check. Okay, design reviews. Some things that I see, details and specs for items, for condition, for test and balance, but then the locations are missing. So you might see a detail with a pump and you'll see a triple duty valve, you see a coil detail, you see, a balance valve, but you out in the system, if you have multi-floors, you might not have it. If you have phasing, or sometimes multiple buildings, and they'll go out on campus, they don't. I forget to show them. They just assume they know where, but trust me, the test valve guys do not know, and they don't want to be the ones to do it, especially after they got a fixed bid in. So look for locations. I mentioned oversized triple duty valve. Anything that's line sized that needs to measure something is oversized if it's the same. Everybody knows that for control valves. And unfortunately, the engineers often size the balancing valves, and they really should just put the GPM on and let it be made smaller. If it's too big, it just will be cracked so low it'll upset the whole flow. So an idea I have is include the tab in the classroom training with the controls contractor. Often these guys are the best people to train plant ops people, and if they're asked, if it's in their bid, they'd be glad to do it. Well, that can actually help you a tremendous amount. So another thing is check for domestic water recirculation that's to be balanced. Often it's only suggested, but they don't really show where it's at. Most TIV guys will focus on mechanical. They will ignore plumbing unless you really put it out there, and anymore that's getting to be required. So the thing to look for is duct air leakage testing required. It's a huge impact on cost and schedule. And in my opinion, sometimes it's asked for when it's not needed. So check on that. Just remember, if they're doing duct air leakage testing, you really should, stop by and watch them. So again, that impacts your scope. Okay. Other thing I didn't put on here, but I wanted to say that if there's any opportunity you can get the tab firm to do a design review along with you, you'd see tremendous benefits. These guys really know a lot. If they get paid to examine the drawings up front, and this is can happen in some places because they have say a hospital have one test and balance company that they'll only allow, or a corporation. They have trust and they want to try to get them involved because they're really valuable and they'll appreciate being invited. A few things. It's 1:30, so I don't want to get too much because this will all be sent to you. You can check on these. I'm going to skip through this one. We'll just let you look at it and see if it later. So one thing I want to tell you is that you may be the only one to really look for these items. Unfortunately, it's you know, the knowledge of test and balance, knowledge of balance up in the design is kind of weak and spotty. So you may affect yourself on it. So see what you can do. Okay. The other thing I'm going to say is that when you're getting to reviewing a tab report, now this is when they're done. Don't be intimidated if you haven't seen it. It really is a logical thing. And one thing that is commonly missing is that they will leave out maybe the hydronic. I've seen this. They'll put in all the air stuff and then they leave out, you know, the chill water or the heating water, or they will leave off full system. So it's you know, a really service to the owner, just to the plant ops guys that might look at this later, is to go through, just see if everything's included, number one. And you know, and maybe you may be the only one to truly read the tab report. Many engineers are too busy designing their next jobs by the time this thing comes through. You know, and think about these engineers, the tab report will be on something they probably thought heavily about a year and a half ago. And you know, they just don't have the focus. And that tab report is big and thick, and they're just, you know, often they'll sit on their desk until someone pokes them, and they'll go in and look for a few spelling errors or math errors and send it out. They don't really look at it carefully. So you might be the only one to look at that. So the other thing, during the tab conference, it'd be a good time to tell them what you'll be looking for in the report. It's a good time to talk about the readings you want to see. You want to, you know, if they're NEB, they're required to show in the report what branch temperature is 100% open, things like that, because they often don't do it. And they really will probably do anything you ask them if they just have to do it once. And people start complaining if you send it in and then you start saying, you know, editing and things. So the more you tell them, hey, I'm looking at this stuff. I'm going to be checking that you've got the most critical boxes for static pressure verification shown. I want to know this stuff, and then they'll do it. I'm sure they will. So the last slide I've got is the back check. Now the back check, essentially this term I use for your hired, part of your scope is to see, you know, basically for the owner, look over the shoulder of the tab. So sometimes they want you to do this, you have a 10% check of all the readings. So it can be whatever is required. But one thing I'm going to point out is if you invest time at the beginning with this tab conference, then you will save more than that time at the end in the back check. Things will go smoother. The review of the tab report will be cleaner and faster. And the last thing I'll leave with you is that make sure you witness a sampling of ductwork or underfloor air system pressure testing. It's some of the most critical things, and it's also very fascinating how they go about doing this. And I encourage everybody to be part of that. So it's 1:34, and I think I've got a few more slides at the end, but those are really just for reference. When you get it, you'll see I'm pointing out where ASHRAE Standard 111 talks about test and balance, and then the ASHRAE Handbook has a chapter on it. There's a few codes that are now requiring it. But since we're at 1:35, I thought I'd stop and see if we have any Q&A at this point.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here for you. How are 5% tolerance proven for the small GRDs with under 100% CFMs?
Yes, that's a good example of why you shouldn't do that. You should have a percent or, you know, a fixed CFM or something like that. Um, unfortunately, they don't divvy it up like that because you can't.
Okay.
Instruments are just not, especially at low flows, they're just not that accurate. That they could they could be, say if you're under 100 CFM, not with a hood, not with a typical hood.
Okay. The next question, what do you expect tab contractors to put in the report for a complete AFMS calibration? Just a flow coefficient?
For the airflow measuring station calibration?
Yeah. Yep.
What they should put
So
in?
what do you expect the tab contractors to put in the report for that? Do you want just the flow coefficient? What are you looking for?
Oh, what they, when they set it up.
Yeah.
That would be good. I mean, I frankly haven't seen a lot personally, of that. The big stations where they, sort of, they would do the calibration. So
Okay.
That's maybe somebody else has seen more of that and would have some suggestions on what you'd expect to see.
Okay. In most cases, the tab contractor is under the general contractor or mechanical contractor. What is your opinion in having the tab contractor under the consultant or a commissioning/owner?
Well, every way is being tried. I can say that. I know that all of the, NEB, and from I've talked to AABC and the tab, they prefer to work more directly under the owner. They would like all to get started sooner. Their difficulties are similar to ours, that they get called, way past when they should have been, and they get, run out there and try to, catch up to the job and finish it. So, the difficulty is that a lot of our jobs are competitively bid in this industry, and so you really don't know who the mechanical contractor is until a month after it bids, and then they often will take multiple tab bids, and they won't tell the guy until it's too late. I've been in that position, and you find out, oh yeah, you were low, but then they won't give you a contract, and so you're like, you can't set up the job. You have nothing to build to. You're stuck. So I think that it's really difficult for commissioning and tab to work under the mechanical situation. The general might be a little better. So, if the commissioning agency, if we work directly for the owner, that that makes sense. But at that point, why not just have them work directly? The whole issue is financing and trust and things. There's a lot of limitations to what each project can do, and so we pretty much kind of take what was directed by the owner and what they can do too.
Right. So I'm going to combine two of these questions here. The one person says, you appreciate your points, great points, Jim. I also feel that the communication channel needs to be open such that the issues found during tab and by the tab firm can be brought to the attention of the commissioning provider. Would you agree? And also, what do you expect the commissioning provider, what do you expect they'll see in a tab summary report? So can and should the tab provider give those issues found into the issues log, I'm assuming, for the commissioning provider? What else do you think the commissioning provider should expect to see in a tab summary?
Tab summary, okay. I'll try the issues log. I'm a firm believer in having one issues log, and and the jobs I've really liked is that we had one list. The engineer's punch list was the same as the commissioning issues log, is the same as the tab issue. It was all one thing. You know, and that's really possible today with the software that's available for a lot of these jobs. So, yeah, I know what it's like, and I really would I encourage the use of software rather than Excel spreadsheets, because then they're emailed around. It's just hard to get things done, get them off the list. So the best advice in there is push for some kind of software like that everybody can use and platform and get off email. So the second question, summary. I expect on a tab summary.
Yeah, what are the 3 most important things you might look for in that?
So a summary of a report. This is actually one of the things I should have mentioned, because the real beef of mine is that they don't tell you up front all the issues they have. You have to go through 94 pages and find all the things that aren't, correct. And what I really insist on is that they repeat at the beginning of it everything that was not meeting the specifications. Anything that was high or low, or anything that weren't able to balance, or or something. Don't make us dig for them, and then they really should. Actually, that should be elevated to a issues log of some sort, because too often the tab report just gets looked at and treated like just a submittal, and not like the true, it's really more closely related to like a commissioning of a system, where you find things that aren't right, and they should be tracked until they're finished. So I find that the tab guys typically don't follow through on the stuff that's not right. And some of the really bad ones will just give you a whole list of things that they couldn't balance, and then it's like not their problem. So, yeah, if I'm getting that question right, that the tab summary is real important, that they pull it out, and that it's treated like a commissioning item that needs to be fixed.
Okay. So I think we've answered all the questions.
Oh, good.
All the questions that we've gotten so far, and we're getting to the end of our time. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We had a great turnout for today's Tech Talk. As I pointed out, we won't have another one till November, but look early next week for an email from myself or Sherry giving you instructions on how to get to the recorded webinars. And we'll have that ready for you to go, also with a login for you if you want to attend the next one in November. I hope to see many of you at the National Conference on Building Commissioning or our upcoming webinar on October 4th. With that, Jim, thank you so much for your time today and your dedication to the association and putting this together. We really appreciate it. And have a great rest of the week, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you.